I signed away my DNA for $500,000 and told myself it wasn't a life. That was the lie I kept repeating in the elevator of the Sterling Reproductive Clinic, staring at my own reflection like maybe I could still become the kind of man who walked away from this. My phone vibrated before the doors opened. "Evan, did the hospital call again?" my mother asked. "They did," I said. "And?" I swallowed. 78,000 by Friday. She went quiet, then coughed hard into the phone. "I'm sorry, baby." "Don't be. I just need a little time." She laughed weakly. Time is the one thing they stopped selling us. I leaned against the metal wall and shut my eyes. Student loans, credit cards, past due rent, and my mother's surgery were all sitting on my chest at once. I had already sold my watch, my camera, my old guitar, and anything else with resale value. "Mom, I have it handled." "You always say that." "Because I have to." The doors opened. "I will call you back," I said, and stepped into a lobby so polished it looked less like a clinic and more like money pretending to be mercy. A receptionist smiled at me like she had practiced on grieving people. "Mr. Vale?" "That's me. Dr. Myers is ready for you." His office smelled like cedar and expensive coffee. He stood when I entered, perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect detachment. "Please sit," he said. "I'm fine standing." He slid a folder toward me. $500,000, wired after the legal and medical process is complete. "And after that?" "You move on." "No calls?" "No updates?" "None." "No chance I ever meet the child?" His face barely changed. "You will never meet the child." That word stuck under my skin. Child, not sample. Child. "The intended mother is a confidential client," he said. "Your identity will remain sealed. There is no father in this arrangement, right?" "Legally, no." "Convenient." He folded his hands. "You may still decline." I laughed once. "Can I pay a hospital bill with principal?" He said nothing. I picked up the pen anyway. My hand shook once, then steadied. "Smart," I lied. I signed every page of the NDA while hating the sound of my own name. When I finished, Dr. Myers took the folder back and said, "Most donors find peace by thinking of this as biology, not fatherhood." "I'm already trying that." "Keep trying." A nurse came to lead me toward the lab wing, but I stopped when I saw her in the waiting room. She sat alone by the windows, one hand wrapped around a paper cup she was not drinking from. Dark hair, cream coat, pearl earrings, posture too elegant for a room like that, and eyes too sad for someone surrounded by that much money. The nurse touched my sleeve. "Sir?" "Who is she?" "I'm not allowed to discuss other patients." I should have looked away. Instead, I looked again. She lifted her face and caught me staring. For 1 second, the whole room went strangely quiet inside my head. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Because she looked like someone trying not to fall apart where strangers could watch. I heard Dr. Myers behind me. "Isabella, we are almost ready for you." So that was her name. Isabella. She stood slowly. "Thank you, doctor," she said, voice low and tired and careful enough to stay with me immediately. The nurse guided me away. In the lab, a technician started explaining forms and timing, but I barely heard him. All I could hear was Dr. Myers saying, "You will never meet the child," like that sentence could erase blood from consequence. I told myself I was not becoming a father. I was becoming a payment plan. A solution. A son trying to keep his mother alive. Still, my mind kept drifting back to the waiting room, to Isabella holding that untouched cup like it was the only thing keeping her hands from shaking. Who comes to a place like that alone? Who spends $500,000 and still looks like they are losing something? When I finally walked out of the clinic, the money was in motion, the contract was done, and my future was quieter than it had been that morning. But Isabella was the part one could not leave behind. I had sold the biology. I hadn't expected to remember her. I found out by accident. The way most things that change your life arrive, not through drama or revelation but through a filing error and a nurse who forgot to close a door completely. I had returned to the clinic 6 weeks after signing to complete a follow-up medical clearance. A routine requirement buried in the contract that my lawyer had highlighted and I had ignored until Dr. Myers' assistant called twice in 1 week. The nurse who was supposed to escort me to the lab went to retrieve my file and left me standing in a corridor near the administrative wing. The door to the records office was 3 inches open. I wasn't trying to hear anything. A voice drifted through the gap. The client was extremely specific about the profile selection. A woman's voice, professional, low. She reviewed 42 candidates. 42. Another voice. Amused. She had a list of requirements. Academic record. Psychological evaluation scores. Family medical history going back 2 generations. Pause. She also wrote a personal note on the selection form. What did it say? A brief silence. Pages turning. Kind eyes. She wrote that she needed someone with kind eyes. The voice softened slightly. And resilience. She specifically used that word. She said she wanted her child to know how to survive difficulty without losing gentleness. I stopped breathing. The nurse reappeared at the end of the corridor. Mr. Vale? We're ready. I followed her without a word. In the lab, I sat on the examination table and stared at the wall while a technician checked my blood pressure and asked routine questions I answered on autopilot. 42 candidates. She had read 42 files and chosen mine. Not randomly. Not arbitrarily. She had looked at whatever version of me existed in that folder, the grades, the evaluations, the medical history, the psychological profile, and she had written a personal note that said kind eyes and resilience. She had chosen me specifically. I drove home in the Toyota and sat in the parking lot outside my building for 20 minutes. This was not supposed to feel like anything. 4 months later, Daniel called me about a gallery opening downtown, and I went because I needed to be somewhere that had nothing to do with debt or contracts or medical paperwork. I was standing near the back with a drink I was barely touching when I saw her. Isabella. She was wearing something dark and simple, her hair down, one hand resting on the slight curve of her stomach that had not been there before. Pregnant. Obviously, quietly, unmistakably pregnant. She was looking at a painting near the far wall with the focused attention of someone who had come to a gallery because they genuinely wanted to see the art and not because they needed to be seen at it. I should have left. Daniel was talking beside me about something I had completely stopped tracking. You okay? He asked. Fine, I said. Give me a minute. I moved to a different section of the gallery, putting distance between us, telling myself it was the right thing. She didn't know who I was. I was a sealed file, a contract, a legal non-entity in her life. Approaching her would be a violation of 12 different clauses I had signed my name to. Then she dropped her program. She bent carefully to retrieve it, one hand on her knee, and a passing guest nearly walked into her without looking. I moved before I decided to, crossing the room in 5 steps, steadying the guest's arm just enough to redirect them. Isabella straightened and looked at me. Thank you, she said. It's a crowded room, I said. Up close she looked different than in the clinic waiting room. Still elegant, still carrying something heavy behind the eyes, but there was something new alongside it. A fragile, frightened hope that she was trying to keep contained. I like this one, I said, nodding toward the painting she had been studying. She looked back at it. It reminds me of waiting. For what? She smiled at the canvas. Everything. We stood there for a moment in the specific silence of 2 strangers who have nothing to explain to each other yet. I'm Evan, I said. She turned. Isabella. I already knew that. Are you here alone? I asked. I prefer it sometimes. She touched her stomach briefly, unconsciously. We're figuring things out. I looked at her face. The resilience she had specifically asked for. The gentleness she had hoped to give her child. She had no idea she was looking at the man she chose. And I had no idea how to be that man without destroying everything. But I could not walk away. I already knew that too. I was not supposed to be at St. Catherine's the night Lucas was born. I was there because the clinic's legal office called that afternoon and said there was one final set of documents to sign before the file could be permanently sealed. Routine, the assistant said. 10 minutes, Mr. Vale. Nothing about that night felt routine. Rain slapped the hospital windows hard enough to sound like static. I sat in a plastic chair outside admissions, jacket damp, pen in hand, skimming a stack of release forms I barely understood. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Did you eat? I typed back, working on it, even though I had not eaten since noon. Then I heard raised voices at the end of the corridor. Her blood pressure is dropping. Call Dr. Sharma now. We need to move. I looked up automatically. 2 nurses rushed past me, pushing a gurney. I only caught a glimpse at first. Dark hair. Pale face. One hand hanging over the rail. Then I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. Isabella. I did not think. I followed. A nurse at the double doors threw out an arm to stop me. Sir, you can't go in there. She's alone, I said. Are you family? The question hit me like cold water. No. I mean, not exactly. I know her. Then you need to wait here. I just saw her at the clinic months ago. I know she's pregnant. Is the baby okay? We are doing everything we can, she said, already turning away. Please stay out of the hall. I stayed for 3 seconds. Then I moved closer anyway. The next 10 minutes stretched into something ugly and unreal. I heard shoes squeak, metal trays rattle, clipped orders thrown across the room behind the doors. Once, I heard Isabella cry out, and the sound lodged under my ribs like a blade. "Come on," I whispered to no one. "Come on, Isabella. Stay with him. Stay with yourself." I had no right to say her name like that. No right to stand there praying for a woman who had chosen me from a file and never known she had met me twice. I prayed anyway. At 11:17, a cry cut through everything. Then first, then stronger. A baby's cry. The entire hallway changed around that sound. The tension did not vanish, but it shifted shape. One of the nurses exhaled hard and laughed once in pure relief. My knees nearly gave out. "Baby boy," someone said from inside. "He's breathing well." I put my hand against the wall and closed my eyes. "A boy. My boy," said some reckless, terrifying part of me. I opened my eyes again immediately, like I could shut that thought back where it came from. I could not. A few minutes later, the doors opened and a nurse stepped out carrying a bundle wrapped in a white hospital blanket with blue stripes. "NICU evaluation, then back to recovery," she said to another nurse. I saw his face for maybe 2 seconds. That was all it took. His mouth was open in outrage at the world. His tiny fist had escaped the blanket. His hair was dark and damp against his head. I stared at him with the stunned horror of a man realizing a line he had drawn in his own mind no longer existed. Fear came first. Not abstract fear. Not legal fear. The kind that asks, is he warm enough? Is he safe? Will someone hold him right? Then love arrived behind it, swift and impossible. Then responsibility. All in one breath. I took one step forward without meaning to. The nurse carrying him glanced at me. "Are you with the mother?" I should have said no. I should have stepped back, signed my paperwork, and disappeared exactly the way the contract required. Instead I heard myself ask, "Is she okay?" The nurse shifted the baby higher. "We're still stabilizing her. We need someone for emergency consent if she doesn't wake soon. Are you family?" My whole life seemed to balance on the next second. "No," I almost said. But Lucas made a small sound, somewhere between a sigh and a protest, and it went straight through me. I looked at him. At the tiny fist. The furious little mouth. The life I had sold myself into pretending was just biology. And I made the worst decision of my life. "I'm the father," I said. The words hung there, impossible to retrieve. The nurse nodded once, all urgency, no curiosity. "Then come with me. We need signatures now." She turned, and I followed her down the corridor with my pulse roaring in my ears. A clipboard was pushed into my hands. "Print your name here. Initial here. If we have to operate again, we cannot wait." My hand shook over the line. "Evan Vale." I wrote it anyway. "And the baby's name?" she asked. I looked up. "You tell me." "Mother listed Lucas on her intake file," she said. "Lucas." The name landed inside me like a door closing. I signed the final page and stared through the glass toward the recovery room where Isabella still had not opened her eyes. I had come to protect the contract. Instead, with one sentence, I had stepped into a life that could ruin all of us before dawn broke. Isabella said about one thing that changed everything. "I'm not a good man for what I deserve. Both of us. I have told myself not 100 versions of this story over 4 years, not performed for the courtroom or the judge or anyone watching. Given myself different motives and better lighting. They have arrived none of the versions changed what actually strategy. Quietly, I took Lucas and I ran. With the specific weight of someone who has chosen generosity when they were fully entitled to choose otherwise. Cinematic, no matter how many times I revisit it. Ms. Reyes, there was no dramatic decision, not the court's recommendation, but your crossroads and made a choice I could defend." "Yes," she said. "It happened the way bad decisions usually happen." She sat down. Incrementally, I looked at my hands on the table and tried to locate something until I was already too far down the corridor. Gratitude seemed insufficient. The nurse handed me Lucas at 2:41 in the morning. What I actually felt was a humbling Isabella was still unconscious. Moved to ICU. She had every legal and moral right to take Lucas entirely. A different nurse told me visiting was restricted, to remove me from his life with the contract when her condition stabilized. 4 years of my choices as her evidence. I had signed the paperwork that suggested I was. Nobody in that room would have questioned it because the hospital was understaffed and it was the middle of the night and a baby needed somewhere to go while the mother recovered. I sat in the family waiting room holding Lucas for the first time. The way anything structural was built after damage, carefully, he was attention to every joint. And furious. We did not become friends immediately. One fist curled under his chin like he was already preparing an argument. Isabella was precise him the way someone holds in every logistical conversation, and I was honest in a way I had not allowed myself to be with anyone in 4 years. "You're not mine," and we found somewhere in that combination a language that worked for Lucas even when it was uncomfortable for us. He slept through the technicality. He adapted with the resilience she had specifically asked for when she chose me from 42 files. email asking where I thought about that sometimes. A notification from the clinic's legal office confirming my Saturday afternoon in February received. We took Lucas to the park near my chest that I did not have language for yet. He ran ahead on the path the way he always did. I looked around the waiting room, slightly reckless, fluorescent light, turning back every few seconds to make sure we were still there. Humming in the corner. Then he ran back and took one of Isabella's hands and one of mine without asking or announcing it. Lawyers, just family, staff, like it was the most surrounded a woman like her in a moment like this. Isabella would find me sitting in a waiting room with my name on her emergency paperwork, did not have a name yet, my arms, and everything would unravel. I started exactly the way the contract said it like it was paperwork. I would lose the money. Lucas swung our hands forward. Legal consequences. I finally understood what I had almost destroyed. A world where I was not. I held on. A sealed file. A biological footnote. Then I thought, she is rich. She has doctors and lawyers and a clinic full of people whose job is to protect her interests. She will wake up and she will be surrounded and she will recover and she will never remember the man in the corridor who stared at her son through a window. She will survive this. I was not completely sure I would. I left at 3:17 in the morning. I walked out of St. Catherine's with Lucas in the hospital-issued carrier they had transferred him into, through a side exit into the rain, to the Toyota in the parking garage with the fading paint and the dent on the passenger side. I drove 4 hours north. I want to tell you the justifications got smaller over time. That guilt refined itself into something manageable. That I built a life in Carver City with such competence that the wrongness of how it started faded into background noise. That would be another lie. I rented a one-bedroom under my mother's maiden name, Vale to Cole, close enough that paperwork stayed simple. I found work at a mid-level tech firm doing data analysis, remote enough that nobody asked questions. I bought a second-hand crib and a library of parenting books I read at 4 in the morning with Lucas asleep on my chest. I was terrified every single day. Not of getting caught. That fear was real but manageable. I was terrified of doing it wrong. Of being insufficient. Of Lucas looking at me at some future age and understanding that the first decision made on his behalf was an act of theft. My mother visited when Lucas was 3 months old. She stood in my small apartment holding him and cried. Evan. I know. Where did he come from? It's complicated, Mom. I need more than that. I will explain everything. When? When I understand it myself. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, he has kind eyes. I had to leave the room. Every birthday was its own punishment. Year 1. Lucas learning to walk, grabbing furniture for balance, laughing when he fell. I baked a terrible cake and sang off-key and thought about Isabella. Year 2. Lucas saying my name clearly for the first time. Dada. I held it together until he was asleep, then sat on the kitchen floor for an hour. Year 3. Lucas drawing pictures of our family. One tall figure. One small one. Who's that? I asked. Us, he said. Just us. He thought about it. Is there more? I said, I don't know yet, buddy. Year 4 arrived on a Tuesday in October, and with it came something I had been dreading since the parking garage. A letter. No return address. My real name on the envelope. Evan Vale. My hand stopped working for a full minute. Then I opened it. Lucas turned 6 on a Tuesday in October and asked for pancakes with chocolate chips arranged into a face. Can the face be surprised? He asked. Faces can be whatever you want. Surprised and also a little scared. That is very specific. That's how I feel on birthdays, he said seriously. I made the pancakes. I arranged the chocolate chips into the most accurately surprised face I could manage. Lucas studied it for 10 seconds then said, he looks like you when you burn toast. He ate it completely and asked for another one. 6 years. I stood at the kitchen counter watching him eat and tried to locate the version of myself who had walked out of St. Catherine's Hospital in the rain and could not find him anymore. That man and I had merged somewhere along the way between the first fever that spiked to 103 and the night Lucas had a nightmare and climbed into my bed and pressed his forehead against my arm and went back to sleep like that was the most natural solution in the world. Because it was. That was the problem. That was always the problem. It had become natural. Lucas had started first grade in September. His teacher sent home a note in the second week that said, Lucas is exceptionally curious and asks questions that require me to do additional research. This is a compliment. I put it on the refrigerator. He saw it and said, what's exceptionally mean? It means more than regular. He thought about that. So I'm more than regular curious? Dangerously curious. He grinned. Cool. He had dark hair and careful eyes and a way of tilting his head when he was thinking that I had seen in exactly one other person, briefly, in a gallery, for years before he was born. I tried not to think about that. I mostly failed. The black car parked outside our house on a Wednesday morning in November while Lucas was at school. I noticed it from the kitchen window. Too clean for the neighborhood, windows tinted slightly, engine off, just sitting there with the particular stillness of a vehicle that had found what it was looking for. I set my coffee down. The knock came 2 minutes later. He was compact, mid-50s, gray at the temples, a jacket that said practical rather than impressive. He held up a badge with the ease of someone who had done it 10,000 times. "Mr. Vale," he said. "My name is Detective Ramirez." "Yes." "May I come in? Tell me what this is about first." He looked at me steadily, not unkindly. The look of a man who had delivered difficult news often enough to have developed a specific face for it. "I think you already know what this is about." The street was quiet behind him. An ordinary Wednesday morning in an ordinary neighborhood where nobody knew my real name or my real story or what I had walked out of a hospital carrying 4 years ago. "You've been found, Mr. Vale?" The words landed without drama, which made them worse. "Come in," I said. He sat at my kitchen table and did not accept coffee. He opened a folder and placed a photograph on the table between us. Lucas, outside his school, backpack on, laughing at something outside the frame. My jaw tightened. "She hired a private investigative firm 18 months after her son disappeared," Ramirez said. "She never filed a police report. She was advised that given the contractual complexity, it was better handled privately." "Isabella?" I said. "Not a question. She's been searching for 4 years, Mr. Vale. Consistently. She used DNA databases, clinic records, cross-referenced donor profiles against public records. She narrowed it to 6 men. Then 3. Then you." He paused. "She knows the truth." I looked at the photograph of my son laughing on a sidewalk. "Is she?" My voice stopped working briefly. "Is she coming here?" "She has already left," Ramirez said. "I was asked to come first. As a courtesy." "Whose courtesy?" "Hers." I looked at him. "She could have sent lawyers," he said. "She could have sent police. She has the resources for both." He closed the folder. "She sent me alone and asked me to tell you she wants to talk first." The kitchen was very quiet. Lucas's drawing from last week was still on the refrigerator beside his teacher's note. One tall figure. One small one. "How long do I have?" I asked. Ramirez checked his watch. "She lands in 2 hours." I spent 2 hours cleaning a house that was already clean. I did not know what else to do with my hands. I wiped counters that did not need wiping. I straightened books on the shelf by a centimeter. I moved Lucas's drawing from the refrigerator, then put it back, then moved it again and left it face down on the counter because I could not decide what it meant for her to see it. Ramirez had left his card and gone. The house felt different after he walked out, smaller, like the walls had absorbed the information and were adjusting accordingly. Lucas came home from school at 3:15. He dropped his backpack at the door the way he always did, directly in the center of the entrance where I would trip over it. "How was it?" I asked. "Jaden said dinosaurs were boring," he said with the specific outrage of a 6-year-old who had strong opinions about paleontology. "He's wrong," I said. "Obviously." He climbed onto the kitchen stool and accepted his after-school snack without looking up. "You're weird today, Dad." "I'm always weird." "Weirder than usual. Eat your apple." He ate his apple. I watched him and tried to memorize the specific weight of the ordinary moment. His feet swinging above the floor. The small sound he made biting into the apple. The way he hummed something tuneless between bites. Then headlights swept across the kitchen window. Lucas did not notice. I noticed everything. I heard the car door. Then footsteps on the front path. Deliberate, measured, the steps of someone who had practiced this walk in her mind thousands of times and was now making herself do it at actual speed. The knock was quiet. 3 sounds. Controlled. I crossed the kitchen and opened the door. She stood in the November evening light looking nothing like the woman in the waiting room and entirely like her. 4 years had changed the surface without touching the architecture. She was composed in the way of someone who had paid enormous personal cost to arrive at composed, her jaw set, her eyes direct, her coat dark and simple. No entourage. No lawyers behind her. No performance of power. Just Isabella standing on my front step, carrying 4 years of searching in her expression. She looked at me. I said nothing because there was nothing in the English language adequate to this moment. Then she looked past my shoulder. Lucas had climbed down from his stool and padded to the doorway behind me in his socks. He always came to the door when someone knocked. He claimed it was curiosity, but I suspected it was hospitality, some instinct in him toward welcome that I could not explain and had never taught. He stopped behind my leg and looked at her. She looked at him. The composure she had carried to my door came apart so quietly it was almost private. Not a collapse. A single crack running through something that had been held rigid for too long. Her eyes filled and she pressed one hand to her mouth and made no sound at all. I watched her look at his face. His dark hair. His careful eyes. The tilt of his head at the sight of a stranger, curious rather than afraid. She whispered it like she was talking to herself, not to me, not to anyone, like the words were simply true and needed to be said aloud to be real. "That's my son." Lucas pressed slightly closer to my leg. "Dad," he said quietly, "who is she?" My throat closed completely. Isabella lowered her hand. She was still looking at him with the specific devastation of someone who has found something precious and broken at the same time. "My name is Isabella," she said to him. Her voice was steady enough for him. She had saved the last of her composure for him. "I'm sorry to interrupt your evening." Lucas studied her for a moment with the unsettling accuracy children apply to adults. "You have sad eyes," he said. She laughed once, brief and broken. "I've been told that before." She looked at me then. I stepped back from the door. "Come in." She crossed the threshold slowly. I took Lucas by the shoulders and said, "Hey, can you go to your room for a few minutes and pick which book you want tonight?" "Is she staying for dinner?" he asked. "We don't know yet." He accepted this with the practicality of a child used to adults navigating complicated things in quiet voices. He went down the hall in his socks, turned once to look at Isabella with those direct eyes, then disappeared into his room. The house was very quiet. Isabella stood in my kitchen and looked at his backpack on the floor and the apple core on the counter and the drawing on the counter he had done last week. She looked at every piece of evidence of the life that had been lived here without her. When she turned to me, she did not shout. That was the thing I had not prepared for. I had prepared for lawyers. For fury. For the cold precision of someone using power as a weapon. I had not prepared for the quiet. "You stole 6 years from me," she said. 6 words. No decoration. No performance. Just the truth, delivered at a volume that required me to lean into it rather than absorb the blow and step back. It hit harder than any anger could have. Because she was right. And she knew that I knew it. And she had come here anyway without lawyers and without police, and said it quietly in my kitchen, in front of his apple core and his backpack and his drawing of the two of us. I had no defense. I did not try to build one. "Yes," I said. The legal process began on a Monday with the particular efficiency of people who had been waiting to start. Isabella's lawyers filed within 48 hours of her visit. I sat across from my own attorney, a quiet man named Garrett who specialized in family law and had the expression of someone permanently unsurprised by human behavior, and listened to him explain my position in plain terms. "The donor contract explicitly removes parental rights," he said. "I know." "You then signed hospital paperwork claiming paternity." "I know." "And you left the state with the child." "I know what I did, Garrett." He folded his hands. "Then you understand that legally your position is very difficult." "What does difficult mean?" "It means the contract is clear. Your emotional involvement is not a legal argument. Courts operate on documentation." "He calls me Dad." Garrett looked at me with something close to sympathy. "I know. That matters, but not in the way you need it to." Lucas did not understand what was happening. I had not expected him to, but I had hoped to shield him from the confusion longer than I managed. He overheard a phone call. He saw papers on the table. He was 6 years old and exceptionally curious, and he asked me directly one evening while I was making dinner, "Dad, is someone going to take me away?" I turned off the stove. I sat down on the kitchen floor and he sat across from me in his socks without being asked, because he always matched my energy. That was one of his instincts, and I looked at him and decided that he deserved the truest version of this I could give him in words a 6-year-old could hold. "A long time ago," I said, "before you were born, I made some choices. And now some people are trying to figure out what those choices mean. For me. For both of us." His brow creased. "Is the sad-eyed lady part of it?" "Yes." "Is she bad?" "No," I said honestly. "She is not bad at all." He was quiet. "Did you do something wrong, Dad?" I held his gaze. "Yes." He absorbed that with the seriousness it deserved. Then he climbed into my lap without saying anything else and sat there while the kitchen went dark around us. I held him and said nothing. He cried once, quietly, and stopped himself with the particular dignity of a child who does not yet know crying is allowed. That night wrecked me more than any court document. Garrett called 2 weeks into proceedings with something unexpected in his voice. "Isabella's legal team reached out informally," he said. She wants to share something with the court. What? Evidence that she gathered from the hospital records and the investigative file. Pause. She is not arguing that you stole Lucas for profit or malice. She is telling the court you raised him. I sat down. Why would she do that? I think, Garrett said carefully, she wants the court to see the full picture. The full picture was presented on a Thursday morning in a courtroom that smelled like carpet cleaner and old wood. Isabella sat across the aisle from me in a gray coat and did not look at me during the proceedings, but she had submitted 4 years of documentation acknowledging Lucas had been cared for, loved, and raised with consistency. The judge recommended shared custody pending evaluation. Then Isabella stood. Your Honor, she said, I would like to make a statement regarding my decision. The room went very still. I looked at her for the first time all morning. She was looking directly at me. Isabella said 4 words that changed everything. He deserves both of us. Not delivered dramatically. Not performed for the courtroom or the judge or anyone watching. She said it the way people say things they have arrived at through genuine pain rather than strategy, quietly, with the specific weight of someone who has chosen generosity when they were fully entitled to choose otherwise. The judge looked at her. Ms. Reyes, you understand this is not the court's recommendation but your personal decision? Yes, she said. I understand. She sat down. I looked at my hands on the table and tried to locate something appropriate to feel. Gratitude seemed insufficient. Relief felt selfish. What I actually felt was a humbling so complete it had no clean name. She had every legal and moral right to take Lucas entirely. To remove me from his life with the contract as her foundation and 4 years of my choices as her evidence. The court would have supported her. Nobody in that room would have blamed her. She had chosen differently. Not for me. I understood that clearly. For him. The co-parenting arrangement was built slowly, the way anything structural is built after damage, carefully, with attention to every joint. We did not become friends immediately. We did not pretend the past had a different shape. Isabella was precise and direct in every logistical conversation, and I was honest in a way I had not allowed myself to be with anyone in 4 years, and we found somewhere in that combination a language that worked for Lucas even when it was uncomfortable for us. He adapted with the resilience she had specifically asked for when she chose me from 42 files. I thought about that sometimes. 3 months after the courtroom, on a Saturday afternoon in February, we took Lucas to the park near my apartment. He ran ahead on the path the way he always did, too fast, slightly reckless, turning back every few seconds to make sure we were still there. Then he ran back and took one of Isabella's hands and one of mine without asking or announcing it. Just held both. Like it was the most practical solution available. Isabella looked at me over his head. Something passed between us that did not have a name yet but was not nothing. I had started this story by signing away a life like it was paperwork. Lucas swung our hands forward. I finally understood what I had almost destroyed. And I held on.